Have you ever felt trapped inside yourself? Like the world handed you a script, and every time you tried to be who you really are, someone told you to shut up? This is the story of a boy from the American South. Raised in a town where love came with conditions, and the truth was locked away in a closet. But one day, he decided to stop surviving in silence and started living out loud. Through tears, glitter, and an unexpected letter, Eliot found a way to become whole. And maybe, along that path, you'll find a piece of yourself too. The Silence in the South. Tupelo, Mississippi. You might have heard that name before. A small town in the southern United States, known for being the birthplace of Elvis Presley, the king of rock. But to me, Tupelo never had a sound. Tupelo was silence. A silence that lingered through the heavy Sunday mornings, that echoed between the church pews and hid behind the polite smiles of neighbors. A silence that wasn't just the absence of noise. It was the absence of permission. My name is Eliot. I'm 28 years old, and this is the story of how I had to strip away everything people expected of me in order to finally dress myself as who I truly was. Literally. But before I tell you about Lola LaFleur, my drag, my persona, my rebirth, you need to understand where I come from. Because only those who know the weight of where they were raised can measure the strength it takes to reinvent themselves. I grew up in a light beige wooden house with a porch that creaked with every step and a rusty sign on the front door that read, "God bless this home." My parents were the picture of the traditional South. My father, a quiet man who always had a Bible in hand and strong opinions about right and wrong. My mother, softer, but still bound to the belief that women should nurture and men should lead. I was the youngest of two boys. My brother Josh was the family's pride and joy. He played football in high school, was active in the church youth group, and helped my dad with yard work. I tried to be invisible. From a young age, I knew something was different about me. But it wasn't a difference that hurt. It was a difference that shimmered. It felt like there was a parade inside me, a burst of color, a disco soundtrack waiting to be played. I loved the afternoons when my mom let me fold clothes with her. I was fascinated by the textures, the fabrics, the colors. I loved rummaging through her sewing kit, mesmerized by the gold threads and oddly shaped buttons. When we were alone, she let me wear a colorful scarf on my head, or dance to Whitney Houston. But all of that was just a game, an innocent little play, as she called it. Eventually, I learned that the play had to end. School was cruel, as it often is for those who don't fit the mold. I walked funny. My voice was too soft. My gestures were called gay stuff by the other boys. The bullying started early, and so did my performance of being a normal boy. I learned to walk stiffer, to avoid crossing my legs, to speak less. I even mastered the art of hiding my own laughter because they said I laughed like a girl. And in the South, laughing like a girl was nearly a crime. But the most painful part wasn't what others said. It was what I began saying to myself. I started trimming myself down, shrinking, trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for me. Every time I wanted to sing loud, I whispered. When I felt like dancing, I froze. When I longed to wear something beautiful, something that sparkled, I buried myself under baggy, colorless clothes. As a teenager, I developed a paralyzing fear of mirrors. Not because I hated what I saw, but because the mirror always showed me an incomplete version of myself. I'd look and see someone trying so hard to be something they weren't. I saw the Eliot my family expected, not the Eliot my heart knew existed. Sundays were the worst. We dressed in our best clothes and went to church. The pastor preached about salvation, sin, and purity. And somewhere in all those sacred words, There was always one aimed directly at me, even if no one knew it. It was like every sermon whispered, "You are wrong. You are a mistake." And I believed it. For a long time. Still, there was a small corner inside me that never went completely silent. A part of me that dreamed of being free, of being light. I clung to little moments. Nights when I'd dance secretly in my room. Times I'd sneak my mom's lipstick and paint my lips after everyone had gone to bed. The fantasies I'd create about a world where I could be whoever I wanted to be. But that world felt as far away as a shooting star. I'd sit on the porch and look up at the sky and whisper, "Just let me be me. That's all I ask." And the saddest part is, back then, I didn't even know exactly who me was. I just knew I wasn't the boy pretending to be happy at family birthday parties. I wasn't the teen memorizing Bible verses just to earn approval. I wasn't the son trying and failing to make his father proud. But I was someone, and that someone was waiting for a chance to breathe. This is the story of how I stopped waiting and started living, of how the silence of the South couldn't quiet the voice screaming inside me, a voice with a name, glitter, red lipstick, and 6-inch heels. This is the story of how Lola LaFleur was born, and she was about to change everything. The first time I saw myself. Life in Tupelo moved like an overly calm river, predictable, stifling, surrounded by banks that didn't allow for detours. But no one ever told me that when you hold back who you are for too long, that river overflows, and it takes everything with it. I was 22 when I came back home. College hadn't worked out. It wasn't the classes, it wasn't the grades, it was me. I felt out of place walking those university hallways, just like I always did on the sidewalks of Tupelo. I didn't belong. Truth is, I never really knew where I did. Coming back home felt like sinking. I hid in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by old furniture, posters from the early 2000s, and a wardrobe that had never truly been mine. The town felt even smaller, people more inquisitive, and the pressure to get my life on track became unbearable. But deep down, I didn't want anyone's tracks anymore. I wanted to fly, even if just for a few seconds. That's when something happened. Something small, intimate, but as transformative as an earthquake in slow motion. It was a random summer night, and everyone was already asleep. The heat clung to my skin, and I couldn't fall asleep. My heart was racing. For no reason, my fingers were restless. I got up, walked to the hallway bathroom cabinet, and there it was, a box of my mom's forgotten items, dried up lipsticks, a nearly empty eyeliner, and a deep blue eyeshadow palette with its little mirror still intact. I grabbed it like I was committing a crime, closed my bedroom door. My hand was trembling. I put on an old playlist in my headphones. Whitney, of course. The song was I Have Nothing. Ironic, because in that moment I had everything. Time, silence, and desire. I opened a drawer and pulled out a red bedsheet. It was old, the edges frayed, but it was the most colorful fabric I had. I tied it around my body, improvising a dress. Then I found an old plastic tiara from some childhood costume and slipped it into my hair. I dabbed my finger into the eyeshadow and gently brushed it across my eyelids. It wasn't great, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. With every layer of that makeshift makeup, a part of me came to life. I saw my features through different eyes. I looked into the mirror. For the first time without shame, without guilt, without wanting to change a thing. And in that reflection, split between a tired boy and the woman beginning to emerge, a name came to me. Lola LaFleur. Don't ask me where it came from. It wasn't planned. It was instinct. It was soul. It was identity. In that instant, Lola wasn't just a reflection. She was the freest version of me. She was everything Eliot had been hiding since he was 7. She was glitter, excess, loud laughter, a fierce gaze, pain transformed into art. I sat on the floor, still in that bedsheet, with messy makeup and a racing heart, and I cried. I cried like someone who had just found themselves, like someone who had come home, like someone who had survived. But it wasn't sadness, it was relief, it was birth. Because no one prepares you for what it's like to see yourself, truly see yourself, for the first time. I'm not talking about the mirror that reflects your surface. I'm talking about the one you feel inside, the one that shows you who you've always been, even when the world insisted on hiding it. That night, Lola became my most precious secret, and also my hope. She wasn't just a performance. She was language. She was my prayer, my scream, my dance, repressed for decades. For weeks, I repeated the ritual, sometimes with more flair, sometimes just a touch of lipstick. Each time I connected more. Each time I felt less fear and more need. It was like breathing, but no one could know. Life outside that room stayed the same. My dad kept asking me to find a job. My mom suggested technical courses. Josh talked about marriage, kids, the future, and I smiled. I said, yes, maybe. I'll think about it. But the only thing I could think was, how do I keep Lola alive? I started spending hours online, discovering the drag world. It was like opening windows to a magical castle. I watched RuPaul's Drag Race in secret with my headphones on. I watched interviews, makeup tutorials, learned what contouring was, cut crease, baking. I devoured that world like someone starving, for years. But with every new discovery came a new fear. What if they found out? What if my mom opened the wrong browser tab? What if my dad found my makeup stash hidden in the shoebox? What if... Even so, I couldn't stop. Because Lola gave me strength. Because when everything else felt like it was falling apart, she reminded me that there was something inside me worth saving. One afternoon, after everyone had left the house, I got fully dressed. This time, it wasn't just improvisation. I used everything I had. The blue shadow, the red bedsheet, the shine of red lipstick. I put on heels, borrowed from my mom without her knowing, and strutted alone through the living room. I danced. I sang. I imagined an audience giving me a standing ovation. I saw myself in Las Vegas. I saw myself in New York. I saw myself far from Tupelo. I saw myself happy. But after the dancing, the laughter, the euphoria, came the silence. That old familiar silence, the one that says, "This won't last." I packed everything away in a rush, wiped the makeup with tissues that stung my eyes, washed my face like I was scrubbing away a crime. And when my family returned, there I was. Clean, calm, harmless, invisible again. But deep down, I knew. Invisibility had an expiration date. Because, once you truly see yourself, you can't pretend you haven't. And I had seen her. I had seen Lola. And from that moment on, the world would never be the same. The discovery. The fear of being discovered had always followed me. Like a shadow. Like a second heart beating in the dark. Every step outside my room was a calculation. Every gesture, a precise balance between who I was and who I needed to appear, to be. It was exhausting. And I was drained. Even so, I couldn't stop. With each passing day, Lola grew stronger. She was no longer just blue eyeshadow and a red bedsheet. She now had a personality, a story. Mannerisms I practiced silently, In the bathroom, phrases I whispered only to myself in the mirror. Poses I repeated until they felt natural. Sometimes I'd spend hours imagining fake interviews, Lola proudly talking about her southern roots, her courage, her journey. It was all a secret, but it was all real. And then came the night of the performance. A bar in Memphis, 2 hours away. A virtual friend, also a drag queen from Arkansas, told me about an open talent night. Anyone could get up on stage. Anyone. Even me. I hesitated for days, thought 1,000 times about backing out. But something inside me kept saying go. It was as if Lola had jumped the fence between fantasy and reality and was now pounding on the door, demanding to live. And I let her. That afternoon, I lied to my family, said I was going to visit a college friend. My parents were used to my isolation. They didn't question it. I had prepared everything in advance. Makeup, wipes, heels, wig, bedsheet, lipstick, and a makeshift costume using a blouse I had secretly bought at a thrift store in Jackson. I packed it all in a small suitcase, the same one I used when I left for college, and stashed it in the trunk of my car. I drove the 2 hours with my heart lodged in my throat. I got to Memphis just before 9 p.m. I stopped at a gas station and did my makeup inside the car. The rearview mirror was tiny, and I was shaking so much I had to take several deep breaths just to keep from smudging the eyeliner. I applied the lipstick with the precision of someone who'd practiced in the dark. I put on the blonde wig I had been hiding for weeks, adjusted the improvised dress and slipped into the heels. They were tight, but it didn't matter. Nothing else mattered. I walked into the bar with my heart exploding. The venue was small, with colorful lights flashing to the beat of the music. There were other queens there, some stunning, others hilarious, all radiant. I felt at home. For the first time, I saw that I wasn't alone. My name was the second to last to be called. Lola LaFleur from Tupelo. The crowd clapped, not knowing who I was. And for the very first time I introduced myself to the world as who I truly was. I danced. I smiled. I faked confidence. The truth? I was trembling inside. But with every step, every move, something inside me solidified. When the music ended and the applause came, I almost cried on stage. But I held it in. I stepped off that stage like someone who had just crossed a bridge that could never be crossed back. I got into the car with my face flushed and my soul floating. I packed everything back into the suitcase, wiped the makeup off with tissues, until my skin burned, changed clothes, and took a deep breath. It was nearly midnight. I drove home in the dark, replaying the performance over and over in my mind, still feeling the warmth of the spotlight on my skin. I pulled into the garage like I always did, and crept up the stairs in silence, ready to crash into bed. I was happy and tired. But something was wrong. My bedroom door was open. The bedside lamp was on, and my suitcase was on the bed. Open. My mother was sitting at the edge of it, holding the wig in her hands. Next to her were the heels, the glitter-stained tissues, the smeared lipstick. All of it. Exposed. Our eyes met. For a moment, everything stopped. Time. Sound. Air. She didn't say a word, and neither did I. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I just stood there, frozen, like my body had shut down. She slowly got up, placed the wig on the bed, and walked out of the room without looking back. The sound of her footsteps down the hallway echoed inside my skull. I closed the door and sat on the floor. I didn't cry. Not yet. That night the silence was louder than any scream I'd ever heard. In the days that followed, nothing was said. But everything was felt. My mother wouldn't look me in the eyes. She offered me dinner like someone feeding a stranger. My father didn't know anything, at least not yet. But the energy in the house had shifted. It was heavy. Josh, my brother, noticed. He asked if I was okay. I said I was. He pressed. I deflected. It was like living in a room full of cracked mirrors, each one reflecting a sliver of my truth, but none showing the full image. I spent nights sleepless, full of fear, anger, but mostly sadness, because I knew something had broken, something between me and my mother, and maybe it could never be repaired. The cruelest part was, she didn't have to say a word to hurt me. Her silence cut like a blade. That week, I went back to hiding Lola. I tucked everything away again. Deeper this time, I buried her, and I started wondering if it had all been a mistake. The performance, the trip, the courage. Because what is courage in a world that answers with disdain? But a voice inside me whispered, it wasn't a mistake. It was truth. And truth always finds a way to rise, even when the world does everything it can to bury it. Rejection. Out loud. What came after the discovery was worse than I had imagined. Not because there were screams, not because there were fights, but because there was silence. A silence that screamed. For days, my mother avoided eye contact. She acted like she hadn't seen anything, like it had all been a bad dream she could erase. But there was something in her gestures, in her downcast eyes, in the way she pulled her hands back when serving me coffee, as if touching me meant touching what she feared the most. My father still didn't know. Or maybe he pretended not to. And that pretending, that omission became the tightrope between us, a rope ready to snap. Lola was tucked away, not out of shame, but out of grief. I wore pajamas and sat on my bed, staring at the closet like someone staring at a tomb. Inside was everything that made me feel alive, but now seemed to have killed me in the eyes of the people I loved. I spent sleepless nights waiting, hoping that my mother would open the bedroom door and say something. Anything. Help me understand. I don't get it, but I want to try. I love you, but nothing came. Until that Sunday. In my house, Sundays were sacred. We woke up early, all had breakfast together before church. Buttered toast, bacon sizzling in the pan, the smell of coffee filling the rooms. It was almost a ritual. One that even though I no longer shared their faith, I still respected, for the sake of routine, of memory. That day, I got up with a heavy body. The whole week had drained me. But I got up. I put on the most neutral clothes I had. A blue shirt, jeans, like somehow an outfit could erase the truth. I sat at the table. My brother was already there. My mother poured juice. My father read the newspaper. Everything looked like any other Sunday, until it wasn't. Without looking up, without changing the tone of his voice, my father said, "A man who dresses like a woman is not welcome in this house." 10 words, that's all it took. But each one hit like a stone. My mother froze for a moment. The glass in her hand trembled slightly. But she said nothing. She went on. Josh, my brother, lowered his head. He didn't look at me. Stayed silent. As if what had just been said was just another line in a conversation. As if it hadn't just ripped open someone's chest at the table. And me? I froze. Hands on the table, eyes fixed on the empty plate. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. But inside, something cracked. The shame wasn't mine. The guilt wasn't mine. But the pain. That pain was all mine. I stayed a few more minutes, swallowed hard, tried to breathe, but the air felt heavier than ever. Then I stood up. I went to my room, and this time I packed a suitcase again, but not just any suitcase. A final one. It didn't just need to carry clothes. It had to carry what was left of me. I packed the wig carefully, wrapped the heels in towels, like fragile porcelain, rolled up the sequined blouse I'd worn in Memphis, as if I were wrapping a piece of my soul. Tucked my favorite lipstick into a small bag, along with the letter I had written to myself long ago, back when I thought I was going to break. A letter that said, "You are stronger than the world wants you to believe." I zipped the suitcase shut, took a deep breath, and walked downstairs carrying it. My parents were in the living room, the newspaper still in my dad's hands, my mother beside him, hands folded together. They saw me, but they said nothing. Not a, "Where are you going?" Not a, "Please stay." Not even a, "I'm sorry." And in that moment, I understood. Their love existed, but it had conditions. It had limits. It had rules I never agreed to follow. I looked at Josh. He stared back at me. In his eyes there was a silent apology, but no courage. No courage to stand up. No courage to hug me. No courage to say, "You're my brother and I love you." And I understood. It hurt. But I understood. At the door, before leaving, I looked one last time at the house I grew up in. The picture frames on the wall, the worn-out couch, the rug in the living room still marked with the wine stain from Christmas 2009. It was all familiar. And yet, it was all foreign. I left without saying goodbye. Because how do you say goodbye to something that had already let go of you? On the road while driving, I let the tears come. They fell weakly, as if even they were tired. The radio was off. The world felt too quiet. With every mile I put between me and Tupelo, I felt farther from the version of Eliot that had tried so hard to be accepted. That had tried so hard to fit in. And the farther I drove, the closer I felt to Lola. Because that day at that breakfast table, Eliot was rejected. But Lola was alive. And she was the one who carried me away. Rebuilding from ruins. When I left Tupelo that morning, I had no real destination. Just a number saved in my phone, a college friend who lived in Chicago. The same one who, during a freshman orientation night, once leaned in and whispered, laughing, "If you ever need to run away, my door's always open. Literally, it never locks properly." I laughed at the time, but that day, with a trunk full of identity and pain, that memory became my escape route. The drive to Chicago took just over 11 hours. I drove straight, stopping only to refuel and splash cold water on my face. The road was long, gray, endless. Every highway sign that pulled me farther from Mississippi felt like the final period on a chapter I never wanted to reread. I had no plan. Just one wish: to survive. I arrived in Chicago on a cloudy Monday night, just past 10 p.m. The city swallowed me whole. Its skyscrapers, honking horns, stoplights, and a cold that felt like it came straight from the sky. I parked outside an old red brick building and sent a message. "I'm here." He came down a few minutes later, sweatshirt, mismatched socks, sleepy face, and a warm hug. That was Leo. Leo with an L for light, for liberation, for home, even if temporary. We climbed 4 flights of stairs to a small, cluttered apartment, full of stacked vinyls and the scent of cheap incense. Leo shared the place with a music student named Ravi, who seemed to live solely for his off-key saxophone, which he played at odd hours of the night. "You can crash on the couch for a while," Leo said, "or forever. I kinda like the company." Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The couch became a mattress. The mattress became a corner of the bedroom. And when Ravi moved in with his boyfriend, that bedroom became mine. I got a job delivering food through an app. I'd leave early, bike around the city all day, and come back at night exhausted. It was a repetitive cycle, but it was mine. For the first time, everything I did, every delivery, every mile pedaled, was to build something for myself. No more seeking approval. No more hiding. But Chicago could be cruel too. I didn't know anyone. Money was tight. And sometimes the homesickness bit into me like a rabid dog in the middle of the night. I dreamed of my mother, my old room, the smell of her cornbread on Sundays. I dreamed she hugged me, told me it was all a big misunderstanding, that she wanted me back. I'd wake in silence, sometimes with tears on my face. Other times, with anger for still dreaming of a home that had thrown me out. But amid the chaos, there were rituals that kept me grounded. Every night, no matter how tired I was, I'd lock my bedroom door, play music, dress up as Lola, and look at myself in the mirror. Sometimes it was just lipstick. Other times, full makeup. Lola was my prayer, my anchor, my reminder that I existed. I'd look in the mirror and whisper, "You're alive." And that sentence alone was what kept me from falling apart. I started recording these moments in short videos, but I never posted them. They were just for me. A form of release. Little monologues to the camera where I talked about hard days, doubts, loneliness. But also about the small wins. The day I delivered 23 orders back to back. The day Ravi let me borrow a better concealer. The day an elderly woman saw me dressed as Lola. Yes, it happened in the elevator. And said, "You look like an old movie star, so elegant." Little by little, I started meeting people. Leo took me to an LGBTQ+ bar downtown one Saturday. It was loud, colorful, chaotic. I stood in the corner, observing. Even there, I was afraid of being seen. Even in a place where everyone was meant to be seen. But something different happened that night. No one looked at me with judgment. They looked at me with curiosity, with admiration, with recognition. That's when I met a drag queen named Cassie Confusion. Amazing name, right? She listened to me talk for 3 straight hours on a rainy night. I let everything out. Tupelo, the Sunday table, the suitcase, the escape, the loneliness. She looked at me and said, "You didn't run away. You survived. And now it's time to live." Those words changed me. Cassie introduced me to the underground drag scene in Chicago, took me to rehearsals, dressing rooms, backstage. At first, I just watched. Then I started helping, with makeup, costumes, ideas. And then one day, she said, "It's your time now. The stage is yours." I trembled, but I smiled too. Because even among the ruins of my old life, even while delivering food in the rain, even while sharing a mattress with a suitcase full of dreams, I was building something new. I was finally starting over. The stage saved me. They say the stage is a place of lies, that everything on it is exaggerated, performed, an escape from reality. But for me, the stage has always been the only place where everything made sense, where truth shone brighter than fear. It was there, under the neon lights of a bar in Boys Town, between loud fans and glitter on the floor, that I stopped being someone hiding and became someone who existed. It all started with an invitation. Cassie Confusion looked at me with glitter in her eyes and a menthol cigarette between her fingers and said, "You're performing next Friday. No excuses, no drama. The stage is yours." I laughed, thought she was joking, but she wasn't. She handed me an envelope with the logo of Velvet Groove, a well-known LGBTQ+ club in Chicago, famous for giving space to emerging artists. Inside, it read, "Open night, free performances. Friday at 10 p.m., free entry, diverse audience, courage required." Courage required. That phrase kept spinning in my head for the next few days. Courage wasn't something I felt I had in abundance, but there was a voice inside me saying, "You've survived worse. You survived shame, abandonment, loneliness. What else is there to fear?" And there was still something left. Lola had yet to show herself to the world. That week, every detail mattered. I spent hours in a second-hand fabric shop in the neighborhood, looking for something that shimmered, something that would say, "I've arrived," before I even opened my mouth. I found a sparkling gold fringe skirt, hanging between old wedding gowns. It was perfect. $8. I built the look using recycled, adapted pieces. A tight black top. A homemade bra decorated with faux gemstones glued on with hot glue. I ended up with 2 burns and 1 uncontrollable laughing fit. I made it all with my own hands, with the urgency and anxiety of someone stitching together their own rebirth. On Friday, I couldn't eat all day. My stomach was in knots. My hands were sweaty. It felt like all the trauma from Tupelo had come back to stop me. My father's words echoed. My mother's face holding the wig. My brother's lowered gaze. Every scene whispered, "You're not welcome." But then I looked in the mirror. Lola was staring back. Made up, dressed, radiant, and she didn't look scared. She looked ready. I arrived at Velvet Groove at 9:30 p.m. Cassie greeted me in the dressing room, surrounded by hairspray, scattered lashes, and nervous laughter. She held me by the shoulders and said, "Remember, the stage doesn't judge. It just shines light, and you were born to shine." My name was the 5th to be called. The host, a giant drag queen named Electra Delicious, announced in a booming voice. And now, all the way from Tupelo, Mississippi, making her Chicago stage debut, the marvelous, the stunning, the powerful, Lola LaFleur. The lights went dark. The beat dropped. "Express Yourself" by Madonna, and I stepped out. At first, my legs shook. I could feel the heels sink into the carpeted stage. The lights felt brighter than I remembered from rehearsals. The audience was a blur of eyes, mouths, phones, applause. But then something happened. In the first dance step, in the first glance I threw to the crowd, in the first hair flip, I got lost, and I found myself. The choreography wasn't perfect. The moves were far from the queens I'd watched in countless videos. But what I had, what saved me, was truth. My expression, my surrender, my gaze full of everything I had lived, and the crowd felt it. During the chorus, I saw hands in the air, heard cheers, people jumping. A couple in the front row hugged. A girl cried. And me? I existed. When the song ended, there was no more fear. Only sweat, heavy breathing, and applause so loud it felt like it was lifting my body. Lola wasn't hiding anymore. She had been born, and she had been applauded. After the show, I returned to the dressing room speechless. Cassie looked at me with that drag mother smile and asked, "Did you feel it?" And I just nodded, because yes, I had felt it. There, on that makeshift stage, surrounded by mic feedback and the smell of spilled beer, I had experienced a baptism. Lola LaFleur was no longer just mine. She belonged to the world. In the days that followed, I got messages from people who had been in the audience. One girl wrote, "Watching you reminded me that I can be whoever I want to be." A boy messaged, "I'm from the South too. I'd never seen someone like me up there." I cried reading them, because for the first time, I realized my pain, my story, my courage were now serving something greater. without meaning. 2, I was becoming a mirror for others, and that gave me purpose. I started performing at more open nights, smaller bars, underground parties, street festivals. Each stage was a scar turned into dance. Each costume, a memory reimagined. Each song, an answer to someone still living in silence. And in every round of applause, I healed a little more. Lola wasn't just a performance. She was reparation. She was reconstruction. She was, finally, freedom. 2 full years. That's how long I went without any contact with my family. 2 years of silence. 2 years of wondering if I still existed to them. If my name was still spoken in that house. If, during dinner, anyone remembered that there was once an empty seat at the table, a seat that was never officially declared lost, but that, with time, was quietly forgotten. In those 2 years, a lot changed in me. Lola grew, not just as a character, but as a voice, a symbol, a space for healing. I became a regular presence in Chicago's alternative nightlife. I was performing at 3, sometimes 4 events a week. It was exhausting, but deeply fulfilling. I started an Instagram page, posted behind-the-scenes clips, snippets of my performances, quotes of resilience. Some posts went viral. Others didn't get much attention. But I knew I was building a bridge. Not toward the past, but toward the people still stuck where I once was, suffocating in fear. One of those nights, I was in the dressing room, cold lights, makeup scattered across the counter, wig resting in my lap. It was my 3rd performance that week. I felt tired, a bit emptied out, to be honest. You know when you give so much of yourself that all that's left is the shell? That night's audience was small. The event was a fundraiser for LGBTQIA+ youth kicked out of their homes, a theme that hit close. So I gave it everything, as I always did. But there in the silence of the dressing room, something tightened inside me. I looked in the mirror. I saw Lola, but I also saw Eliot, the boy from the South, the kid on the porch, with the blue eyeshadow, in the bathroom, the suitcase hidden in the trunk. He was still there, quiet, wounded, still waiting for something that might never come. And then, my phone buzzed, unknown number. For a moment I considered ignoring it, but I picked up. Hello? On the other end, silence. Then, a voice I knew better than any other in this world. Eli. It was Josh, my brother, my childhood best friend, the boy who taught me how to ride a bike, the teenager who used to cover me with a blanket when I fell asleep watching TV, the man who didn't defend me that Sunday morning. My throat dried up. My eyes felt heavy with makeup. Josh. Silence. Again. Then a deep breath. I saw a video of you on Instagram. A friend sent it to me. I didn't know it was you. His voice sounded different. Lower. Cracked. You looked beautiful. I didn't know what to say. The words tangled. Part of me wanted to scream. Why now? Why so late? But another part, the part that still ached, just wanted to keep listening. Then, he said something that completely broke me open. Mom saw it too. She cries every time. Those words sliced through the phone like a blade. I fell silent, swallowed hard. What did it mean? That she regretted it? That she understood? That she missed me? There was no explanation, no apology, but there was emotion, there was truth. And that, in that cold dressing room, was more than I had hoped for. Josh continued. She doesn't talk about it, but She watches. Every time. And sometimes she smiles. I think she's trying, you know? She still prays for you, but now she uses your name. Both of them. That's when I cried. Not on stage, not in front of an audience, but there, among fake lashes and crooked wigs, I cried like someone still saving space inside for forgiveness. I asked, "Why now?" Josh replied, "Because I saw you happy. Because I saw you alive. And because we miss you too." The call lasted 12 minutes. There was no full reconciliation, no promises, but there was a spark, a crack in the wall that had stood between me and my family, a breath of hope where there had only been dust. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay down with the wig still on my head, like a crown. I re-watched my old videos. I watched my first performance at Velvet Groove. I watched and cried again. Because now, I wasn't alone anymore. In the days that followed, Josh sent a few more messages, simple things. A picture of our dog, still living with our parents. A short voice note, the sound of rain hitting the porch. The same sound I used to hear, as a kid, secretly reading fashion magazines. A memory. Remember when we used to dance in the living room when Mom went grocery shopping? Slowly, without asking permission, my past started creeping back in. And as much as a part of me resisted, afraid of getting hurt again, another part wanted to hold it tight. Because, despite everything, I still loved my family. And loving someone who hurt you is a pain the world tries to erase, but when you feel it, you never forget. And in that haze of doubt and tenderness, 1 month later, a letter arrived. But that is the next chapter. My mother's letter. I was never one to believe in signs. For a long time, I thought the world was too random for hidden messages. That life simply moved forward, indifferent to our pain. But after that phone call with Josh, I started noticing things, small gestures, little coincidences, a flower left at my apartment door by an unknown neighbor the very next day, a dream where my mother called me by name, not the one I was given at birth, but Lola. A strange feeling that something was about to happen. Something big. Something I'd waited a long time for but no longer dared to ask for. Then came the letter. It arrived on a cloudy Tuesday afternoon, when the world seemed to slow down. It was tossed among advertisements, utility bills, and pizza flyers. The envelope was simple, stained, no return address. But I recognized the handwriting instantly. Slanted letters, firm strokes, the T's crossed low, the I's left without dots. It was hers, my mother's. For a few seconds, my fingers froze. My body stiffened. Mailbox in hand, the envelope felt glued to my skin, like it weighed a ton. I wanted to open it. I was terrified to open it. I sat on the steps of my building, the envelope in my lap, and just stared. There was no perfume, no decoration, just the truth, about to be revealed. I opened it slowly. My hands were sweating. My heart drummed in my chest. Inside, a single sheet of paper folded in 4. Plain white, smudged with fingerprints, watermarked, like someone had cried on it before sending. I began to read, and everything stopped. Dear Eliot, I waited far too long to write this, much longer than you deserved. And maybe by the time you receive this letter, you'll have already decided you don't want to hear from me. I would understand. I won't lie. When I saw your open suitcase that day, when I saw that wig, that makeup, something inside me broke. But it wasn't you who broke it. It was my ignorance, my rigidity, my misguided belief that love should follow rules. I spent my whole life trying to protect you from the world. But I became the world that hurt you the most. I've seen your videos. I saw you singing, dancing, smiling with your whole heart. I saw you shine with a light I've never seen in anyone. And I asked myself, how could I have created something so beautiful and still tried to erase it? I don't understand everything, son. And maybe I never will. But I'm trying. I'm reading. I'm listening. I'm crying quietly in my room every time I rewatch that video of you dancing to express yourself. You were beautiful and happy and whole. And for the first time, I saw you. Truly saw you. Not the boy I thought I was supposed to raise, but the strong, brave, courageous human being you are. Eliot, Lola, both. All of you. I miss you every day. Your laughter, your mess, your sharp movie commentary. I miss you walking around the house in colorful socks with cold coffee in your hand. You've always been special, but I was blind. And now my deepest prayer is that you'll find a place in your heart to forgive me, if you ever want to. I expect nothing. I just wanted you to know that, despite all the confusion, despite all my failings as a mother, I love you. With love, your mother. I finished reading with my vision blurred, the words smeared by tears spilling like a flood. The letter was soaked in my hands, but I couldn't let go. I repeated parts of it out loud, like my mouth needed to confirm that it was real. I spent my whole life trying to protect you from the world. But I became the world that hurt you the most. That line echoed for hours. How many times had I wished she would say that? How many nights had I spent in silence, hoping for a gesture? A sign? There it was, late, imperfect, but real. I stored the letter carefully, not with my documents, not in a regular drawer, but in the box where I keep my sparkliest earrings, the rhinestone-studded socks I bought with my first performance fee, and the crimson lipstick I wore on my debut in Boys Town. Because that letter was more than paper. It was a piece of my past trying to make peace with my present. It was a step, a gesture, a hand reaching out from across the abyss. And even if I wasn't sure I could cross that distance again, something inside me whispered, maybe, now, it's possible. In the following days, I carried that letter with me everywhere. I read it before every performance. I read it in the bathroom. I read it on a park bench next to an elderly lesbian couple who offered me lemon cookies. I read it in silence, like a prayer. And for the first time since I left Tupelo, I started to think about going back. Not in fear. Not to apologize, but to show that I exist, that Lola exists, that Eliot is now someone who walks through life whole, even with scars. The return. 3 years. That's how long I was away from Tupelo. 3 Christmases without the living room tree. 3 birthdays without my mother's 7 a.m. phone call. 3 long years without hearing my father's voice, not even by accident. During that time, I had convinced myself Tupelo was a closed chapter. Finished. Buried beneath layers of glitter, high heels, and a rebuilt identity. But my mother's letter, tucked away with my most special earrings, reopened. Something inside me. At first I resisted. The idea of going back to that house made me nauseous. Not from fear of being rejected again, but because facing the place where I died while still alive meant reliving everything I had fought so hard to bury. Still, something in me wanted to see with my own eyes if that letter was truly a bridge, or just an apology left at the door with no intention of ever being answered. The opportunity came with an unexpected message. Josh sent it. Simple, brief, but heavy with tension. Mom, asked if you're coming for Christmas. Grandma will be here. It would mean a lot. I took days to reply. I wrote and deleted about 20 versions of maybe. I'll think about it. I don't know. Until finally, in a moment of impulse, I sent, I'm coming. Just like that. The silence afterward was louder than anything that came before. But it didn't suffocate me. For the first time, I was in control. On December 22nd, I packed my suitcase slowly. I chose neutral clothes, comfortable ones. It wasn't the time for sparkle, at least, not on the outside. Lola was coming, with me, whole, in my soul. I took a red velvet dress, my favorite, but I didn't wear it. I placed it in a box, along with my mother's letter, and carried it like a charm. I drove in silence. No music, no radio. Just my thoughts and the steady hum of tires on the road. Winter had begun to show its face. The sky was gray. The southern landscape, bare trees, sleeping fields, looked more melancholic than I remembered. I arrived at dusk, and everything looked the same. The same faded "Welcome to Tupelo" sign. The same narrow streets. The same wooden houses. But something was different. Maybe it was me. I parked 2 blocks from my parents' house, not out of fear, but out of respect for the moment. I wanted time to feel the ground beneath me. I walked slowly, each step a memory. The corner where Josh and I rode bikes. The gate where I waited for the school bus. The garden where my mom used to plant daisies. The same one I once tore up to make a bouquet and told her it was so she'd feel like a queen. I reached the door, the same as always, with the same rusty sign. God bless this home. I knocked softly. My heart was pounding faster than my hand. The door opened before the 3rd knock, and there she was. My mother, older, hair whiter than I remembered, wearing a beige sweater, her hands trembling slightly. She looked at me, and for a second, time froze. We stared at each other. No words, no rush. Then she opened her arms, not like someone inviting, but like someone receiving you back. I stepped forward, without thinking, and the hug happened. It took 3 years, but it happened, and it was the lightest and heaviest hug of my life. Inside the house, everything looked the same. The furniture, the pictures, the smell of coffee and cornmeal cake. But the atmosphere was different. My father sat in his chair. He looked up, saw me. He didn't say hello, didn't say my name. He just nodded, and surprisingly, that gesture didn't cut me, because it wasn't cold. It was restrained. Maybe the most he could give. Josh showed up later. We hugged like brothers who knew they'd failed each other, but still recognized one another. My grandma kissed my cheek, asked if I had eaten, told me I looked more beautiful than ever. And that was all. No one mentioned Lola. No one mentioned the letter, but everyone knew. And somehow, everyone accepted her invisible presence in the room. That night, my mother knocked on the door of my old bedroom, now renovated. Fresh paint on the walls, books neatly stacked. She walked in with a cup of tea and sat on the edge of the bed. We sat in silence for a while. Then she said, "You look at peace." I nodded. It wasn't easy. Still isn't. She held my hand. "You don't have to explain. Just thank you for coming." We stayed like that, hands intertwined. 2 generations trying to understand each other in silence. Before she left, she whispered, "You're still my son, and now, also my daughter. When you choose to be." I didn't cry, not in that moment, but something inside me healed. On the 26th, when I left the box with the red dress in the room, with a note. in case you ever want to meet all of me. On the drive back to Chicago, Lola was with me, in the passenger seat, smiling, and Eliot was too, whole. For the first time, living what I once lived, with screenshots of my videos, reposted by Southern teens, with requests for advice, with tearful voice notes from people saying, "I thought I was alone, until I saw you. Today, I am Eliot, and I am Lola, without fear, without hiding, without needing to choose. I am the boy who grew up in Tupelo, learning to stay quiet, and I am the woman who was born on a stage in Chicago, learning to scream. I am scar and healing. I am laughter and tears. I am silence turned into song. Living as I am is an act of resistance, every single day. But it's also an act of love. Love for who I was, that boy in the mirror with blue eyeshadow and a red bedsheet. Love for who I am, this artist who dances with an open heart and calloused feet like trophies. Love for those who are yet to come, because if I exist, they can too. Today, I walk the streets and sometimes still get sideways looks. I still hear whispered comments, awkward giggles, but I no longer lower my gaze. I lift my chin, because I know who I am, and because I've learned. There is no greater revolution than living fully in a world that tried to erase you. I give talks at schools. I speak about identity, about courage, about fear. I share my story with the care of someone who knows every word can be a seed. Sometimes I see a boy in the back row, curled up, quiet, and I recognize the look in his eyes, the same one I once carried. After the talk, he waits for me in the hallway, nervous, and he says softly, "Thank you for not giving up on being yourself. Now I think I can try to be me too." That's why I keep going. Not for the applause, but for that moment, for that look. Lola LaFleur became a stage name, but also a movement, an identity, a beacon of hope. I became one of the voices in Chicago's drag scene. I've performed at festivals, been interviewed on podcasts, written articles about performance, and queer survival. Not because I chased fame, but because I found purpose. And over time, pain turned into mission. My mother still writes me letters. Not often, but when she does, she writes with her whole heart. In her last one, she wrote, "Seeing you happy is what saves me on the nights I feel guilty for taking so long to truly see you. Thank you for not giving up on me." Those words weigh more than any award, shine brighter than any spotlight. Josh and I rebuilt what we had. Not the same, but something new. He introduced me to his daughter, my niece. And for the first time I heard her ask, "Is Auntie Lola going to dance today?" And I did. There, in their backyard, wearing a pink wig and a sequin dress, with her laughter pushing me forward like a storm of love. And my dad? He still doesn't say much. But on my last visit, during breakfast, he passed me the jar of jam and said, "I saw you on TV the other day. You looked beautiful." He didn't say son. He didn't say Lola. But he said, beautiful. And in that dry, simple voice, I understood. That was as close as he could get to, "I accept you." And that was enough, for now. Today, my home has mirrors in every room, not to feed vanity, but to remind me that I exist, that I deserve to see myself every day. On the mirror in my dressing room, just above the main light, there's a note. It's old, torn at the edges, handwritten on yellowing paper, but it's the phrase that saves me every time I think about giving up. "You survived the silence. Now live in the scream." That phrase stays with me, strengthens me, nourishes me. Because today, I no longer live in fear of who I am. Today, I live with pride for everything I've become. And if you, listening to this story, feel like you're alone, if you feel like your truth is too big for the place you were born in, remember, the world tried to erase me. But I shone brighter, and so can you. You only need to take the first step, even if it's small, even if it's shaky, even if you don't yet know your full name, your final destination, your favorite color, your voice. Take the step. Wear your red bedsheet. Put on that blue eyeshadow. And look in the mirror until you really see yourself, because once you see yourself, no one else can make you invisible again. I am Eliot, and I am Lola, and I am alive, whole in my scream. In the end, this isn't just Eliot's story, and it's not just Lola's either. It's the story of all of us who've ever felt the need to hide who we are just to be accepted. It's about how love, when it's real, transforms, learns, and returns in a different form. It's about survival, yes, but above all, it's about existence. Because resistance is necessary, but allowing yourself to live out loud with pride and truth, that's revolutionary. Lola wasn't born to entertain. She was born to heal what silence tried to destroy. And if you've made it this far, maybe you're ready to live your truth, whatever that may be. If this story touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel. Here, every video is a cry for freedom, a bridge between pain and healing, between fear and courage. If you're looking for real representation, for stories with heart, and characters who challenge the world just to be themselves, this is your place. With every new story, you'll discover that you are not alone, and that being yourself is your greatest power. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If this story made you feel anything, nostalgia, strength, courage, or even forgiveness, then it's already done what it was meant to do. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe a friend, maybe a brother, maybe a mother, or maybe someone who, just like Eliot, is simply waiting for a sign. A sign that it's okay to exist. Because sometimes, all we need is to see someone living their truth, to believe that ours is allowed to bloom.